There are men who walk into a room and immediately shift the air. They haven't spoken, they haven't moved, and yet every head turns, conversations pause. People adjust themselves without knowing why. This is not charisma. It is not popularity. It is power, the kind that doesn't need volume, applause, or performance. Machiavelli understood something that modern men have forgotten. You don't need to speak to command. In fact, the more you speak, the more you reveal. The more you reveal, the more you lose. Words may persuade, but silence dominates. To speak without words is to move in the shadows, while the rest of the world burns itself out trying to be heard. It is the weapon of kings, spies, and men who understand that perception, not persuasion, shapes the outcome. In his political works, Machiavelli warned rulers never to show their full intentions. Language, he argued, makes you readable, and what is readable can be resisted, but the man who speaks without words, through presence, posture, and timing, becomes an enigma. He creates pressure without threats. He sparks curiosity without performance. He bends others toward his will without ever raising his voice. In a world addicted to expression, the one who withholds becomes sacred. In a crowd, he is the one who isn't trying. And that alone makes him powerful, because power is not loud. Power is quiet certainty. Power is when people pay attention to you before you've earned it. When your existence triggers submission, anticipation, or fear, without needing explanation. Most men are trained to speak, to defend themselves, to explain, to prove. But the Machiavellian man is trained to withhold. He knows that attention is given most freely to the one who asks for it least. That mystery multiplies influence, and that the less you say, the more others assume. This is the essence of speaking without words. It is not passivity. It is psychological warfare, subtle, constant, and always underestimated. Because the modern world teaches men to chase recognition, to show their hand, to over-communicate in the name of transparency. But Machiavelli knew better. He knew that if you reveal yourself too quickly, you give your enemies the tools to destroy you. And worse, you give the weak permission to challenge you. But silence builds distance. It creates depth. It makes people wonder what you're thinking. And in that wondering, they begin to shape themselves around your imagined expectations. This is not mysticism. It is the brutal reality of human psychology. People fear what they cannot predict. They submit to what they cannot read, and they obey what they do not understand. So before you say a single word, ask yourself, what have you already said through your silence? What story have you told with your stillness? What truth have you revealed by saying nothing at all? Power begins before the first word is spoken. It begins in the moment someone lays eyes on you, before you've been introduced, before your mouth opens. It begins with how you carry yourself, how you stand, how you look at the world. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that perception shapes reality, and perception is not formed by what you say. It is formed by what you signal, constantly, unconsciously, physically. The man who walks slowly does not chase. The man who holds his ground does not apologize. The man who waits for others to speak first has already placed himself above them. In any room, people are scanning for cues. They are looking for hierarchy. Who is in control? Who is the threat? Who must I impress? And long before you speak, your body has already cast its vote. Most men don't know they're being watched. They slouch, they fidget, they avoid the gaze. In doing so, they declare themselves harmless. And harmlessness is not respected. It is ignored. But the Machiavellian man is never unaware. He knows that his every movement is a message. That speed signals desperation. That stillness signals power. That nervous energy reveals insecurity, while deliberate calm sends a warning. When he enters, he doesn't need to announce himself. His presence does it for him. Because presence is not about being the loudest. It is about being the most certain. And certainty is not a sound. It's a shape. It's a stillness that says, I do not need you to notice me, but you will. Machiavelli advised rulers to be masters of appearance, to project strength even when they feel doubt, to seem confident even when the outcome is uncertain. Why? Because people believe what they see. They respond to posture, to poise, to physical signals of rank and control. When you carry yourself as though nothing can touch you, most people will not dare to try. When you move like a man with time, others rush to catch up. When you speak slowly, if at all, others listen harder. This is not arrogance. This is influence. And it begins in the body. This is why great leaders are studied not just for what they said, but for how they stood. Caesar, Napoleon, even modern politicians, their posture was part of their weaponry. They trained themselves to appear larger, calmer, more composed than those around them, because they understood something the average man never learns. Before people follow your ideas, they follow your image. And image is silent. You cannot speak it into existence. You must embody it. So stop thinking words are your only tool. Every movement is a message. Every breath is a signal. If you speak with your body first, the words that follow will carry weight. But if your presence lacks command, no amount of eloquence will save you. Power is not what you say. It's how the world responds before you've said anything. Stillness is not absence. It is presence amplified. In a world addicted to movement, to speed, to constant stimulation, the man who remains still becomes magnetic. He is not frozen. He is composed. He does not twitch, fidget, or chase. He waits. And in that waiting, he becomes the center of gravity. Machiavelli understood that in the theater of power, motion is not always strength. Often it is the symptom of fear. The need to be doing something, saying something, proving something, it betrays a restless mind. But the man who can sit, stand, and observe without breaking his posture is the man who holds the room. Stillness, properly used, creates discomfort in others. And discomfort makes people speak. It makes them reveal. It makes them weaken themselves in your presence without understanding why. Power is rarely rushed. The strategist who acts too quickly acts without full vision, but the one who waits, who watches, who resists the urge to act prematurely, he gathers power. He sharpens it, and when the time comes, he strikes with precision. Stillness is the physical expression of that principle, the discipline to delay, the refusal to be rushed. Machiavelli warned rulers against being swept up in the passions of the moment, against responding in anger or reacting in fear, because every reaction becomes a confession. It tells your opponent who you are, what you fear, where you are vulnerable. But stillness says nothing. Stillness watches. Stillness collects information while revealing none. Most men fear stillness because it exposes them. It strips away the distractions, the mask of busyness, the comfort of constant motion. In stillness, there is only you. And if you are weak, unsure, or insecure, it will become visible. But this is why mastering stillness is so powerful, because it forces you to confront your own nervous system, to discipline your own instincts. And once you do, you become immune to the psychological chaos that destroys lesser men. In meetings, in confrontations, in negotiations, stillness sends a message. I am not disturbed. I am not impressed. I am not chasing. You are entering my tempo now. There is a reason military commanders, courtroom judges, and heads of state often move with deliberate slowness. It's not for theatrics. It's because they understand that the one who controls the rhythm controls the outcome. Rapid movement is a surrender of tempo, but slow, controlled motion sets the tempo for everyone else. When you move slowly, others feel rushed. When you pause, others feel pressure. And when you do nothing, others reveal themselves trying to fill the void you created. This is the secret Machiavelli never wrote explicitly, but practiced implicitly. The body, when trained into stillness, becomes a weapon. It is patience made physical. It is dominance that doesn't require sound. And it is one of the few signals in human interaction that cannot be faked. Because to be still in the storm, truly still, is to show you are the storm's master, not its victim. The eyes are the first weapon. Before you speak, before you move, before you even step into the conversation, your gaze announces you. It reveals or conceals your confidence, your awareness, your intention, and just as quickly, it commands response. Machiavelli understood that power is not just in what others see, but in what they believe you see. The man who looks without reacting, who observes without blinking, who meets your gaze without flinching, he creates a silent imbalance. Because eye contact is not a casual thing. It's a test. It's a pressure point. Most men fail it without realizing. They look away too quickly, or they hold the gaze too long out of challenge. Both reveal weakness, but the man who controls his gaze controls the tempo of the interaction itself. There is an ancient truth in all power dynamics. Animals, rulers, and enemies all assess threat and submission through the eyes. The lion that stares calmly commands the savanna. The subordinate looks down. The pretender stares too hard, but the true master sees clearly and needs no performance. The Machiavellian man knows when to look. He knows when not to. He does not seek eye contact for validation. He does not give it for free. When he enters a room, he scans briefly with composure, not like a man seeking attention, but like a man surveying a territory he may soon control. This control of the gaze is not theatrical. It is strategic. When you look someone in the eye, you are making a statement. I see you. I see what you're hiding. I am not moved by it. But it must be clean, not aggressive, not anxious, just still. When you withhold your gaze at the right moment, you create scarcity. People want attention most from the one who withholds it. When you break eye contact first, slowly and deliberately, you signal control. You're not escaping. You're choosing not to give more. And silence amplifies the power of the eyes. In speech, eye contact can soften or connect, but in silence, it sharpens. A look, unaccompanied by words, forces the other person to interpret, and in interpretation, they reveal their own psychology. They begin to project, is he judging me? Does he know something? Is he challenging me? The Machiavellian doesn't answer these questions. He lets them grow. He lets the gaze say what words cannot, because the moment you speak, the mystery dissolves, but a well-timed look lingers in the mind long after the meeting ends. In every power structure, the man who controls where and when he looks establishes rank. And in every negotiation, the one who listens with his eyes, without blinking, without smiling, without submission, controls the flow. So train your gaze. Strip it of nervousness. Remove the smile that tries to appease. Let your eyes become a mirror. Still, cold, and unreadable. Not because you seek dominance, but because you no longer fear being seen. Silence is not what most believe it is. It is not absence. It is not hesitation. It is not retreat. Silence, in the hands of the powerful, is precision. It is psychological pressure. It is the space where others collapse under the weight of their own need to be heard. Machiavelli understood that words are liabilities. Every sentence you speak limits you. It reveals intention, invites scrutiny, exposes your position. But silence keeps you fluid, unreadable, untouched. It creates a vacuum, and human nature abhors a vacuum. In that vacuum, others rush to speak, to explain, to reveal, and they do not realize they are giving you exactly what you need. The average man fears silence. He fills it quickly, with apologies, with justifications, with small talk, with noise. But the Machiavellian man uses silence as a scalpel. He lets it linger. He lets the discomfort grow, because discomfort is leverage. When you do not break silence, others will. And when they do, they will speak from compulsion, not strategy. They will expose themselves. They will say more than they intended. And in doing so, they give you information, power, without ever realizing it. Machiavelli warned rulers to guard their speech. He understood that a well-timed silence could disarm an enemy more effectively than any insult. That in negotiation, the first to speak often commits. The one who cannot endure the pause becomes the one who concedes. Silence slows the tempo. It forces people out of their rehearsed scripts. It breaks rhythm. It throws others off balance, precisely because it is unexpected. We live in a world trained to fill space. So when you don't, you stand apart. There is also another side to silence, the internal one, the discipline it requires. The temptation to speak is enormous, especially when your ego is challenged, especially when you are misunderstood. But the powerful man does not correct every misinterpretation. He does not flinch at every false accusation. He lets them talk. He lets them dig, because the more they speak, the more they reveal. And the less you speak, the more they wonder. The longer you wait, the more they unravel. This is not passive. It is deliberate dominance. Machiavelli didn't simply advocate for silence. He weaponized it. In The Prince, he cautioned leaders to speak rarely about anything that truly matters. Why? Because every opinion can be used against you. Every truth can be twisted, but silence cannot be misquoted. Silence leaves no trace, and that is why it's feared. To master strategic silence is to refuse the bait, to watch the trap spring without stepping into it. It is to understand that sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. That restraint is not weakness, but calculation, and that in a world addicted to noise, the man who can sit calmly in silence becomes a mystery, and in that mystery, he becomes a threat. The man who does not react is the man they cannot control. This is the quiet law behind every power game Machiavelli ever studied. In politics, in war, in courtly life, the one who withholds, who does not rush to explain, to defend, to emote, becomes untouchable. Why? Because reactions are leverage. When you react, you hand over your internal world. You tell them what bothers you, what moves you, what breaks your mask. And once they know that, they can move you like a puppet. But the man who doesn't flinch, who withholds both emotion and explanation, becomes something far more dangerous, unreadable. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must appear virtuous, but act according to necessity. To do this, he must withhold. He must conceal his motives behind a screen of discipline. This principle applies far beyond governance. In conversation, the same rule holds. When someone insults you, do you correct them? When someone misunderstands your intent, do you immediately clarify? If you do, you've already lost. You've handed them your need to be understood. But the Machiavellian man does not need to be understood. He needs to win. And winning often requires silence. Not for silence's sake, but to preserve the edge that reaction would destroy. Most people speak from compulsion. They feel discomfort and rush to relieve it. But compulsion is weakness disguised as honesty. It may feel righteous to correct, to confess, to explain, but it's often just an inability to hold tension. Power, real power, is the ability to carry that tension, to let others misunderstand you while you remain unmoved, to allow assumptions to form while your true thoughts stay hidden behind a curtain of restraint. Machiavelli saw this curtain not as deception, but as armor. Not every truth must be spoken. Not every motive must be seen. What is withheld becomes protected, and what is protected can never be used against you. To withhold is not to be cold. It is to be precise. There is no virtue in emotional exposure when surrounded by rivals, predators, or manipulators. To bleed in front of wolves is not noble. It is suicidal. The wise man bleeds where no one sees. He withholds not because he has nothing to say, but because he has too much to risk. Every withheld response preserves mystery, and every preserved mystery creates power. This is the difference between dominance and desperation. The desperate man speaks to relieve the pressure inside him. The dominant man waits, watches, and speaks only when it serves a purpose. Withholding is not passive, it is selective revelation. It is the art of showing just enough to guide perception, while keeping the truth buried in shadow. Machiavelli would tell you, you do not owe the world your mind. Reveal only what builds your position. The rest must remain behind your eyes, behind your silence, behind your control. To be unreadable is not to be invisible. It is to be untouchable. The man who cannot be read cannot be predicted, and the man who cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. This is why Machiavelli so often praised the art of appearance over the risk of truth. He knew that people don't follow reality, they follow perception. The unreadable man becomes whatever others project onto him. To some, he is wise. To others, dangerous. But always, he is respected. Because what cannot be known becomes sacred, and what cannot be understood becomes feared. Most people leak constantly. They signal their intent, their desires, their insecurities, through tone, through reaction, through over-explanation. But the Machiavellian does not leak. He wears a mask, not of deception, but of protection. A calm exterior, a quiet mind, an impassive face that invites interpretation but offers no confirmation. This mask is not a lie. It is a strategy, because people want certainty. They want clarity, and in that hunger they will assign meaning to your silence, your stillness, your ambiguity, and often they will assign more power to it than you ever had to begin with. The unreadable mask is not blank. It is calculated. A controlled display that reflects nothing of what you truly think or feel. It frustrates those who seek your opinion. It unnerves those who want your emotional reaction. It enrages those who thrive on chaos, because you give them no target, no weakness, no pattern to exploit. And in their frustration, they expose themselves. Because when others try to figure you out, they reveal far more than you ever do. This is the beauty of becoming unreadable. It turns the spotlight away from you and onto them. They talk, they guess, they confess, and all the while, you listen. Machiavelli taught that the appearance of virtue is more useful than virtue itself, not because morality is meaningless, but because image shapes power far more efficiently than honesty. In the same way, the appearance of calm, of neutrality, of detachment, even when it's an act, is more commanding than raw emotion. The unreadable man appears unshaken by praise or insult, untouched by flattery or threat. And in a world of volatility, that kind of control is magnetic. But to wear the unreadable mask well, you must believe in it. It cannot be a gimmick. It must become your default. When provoked, you breathe. When tempted to react, you wait. When invited to explain, you decline. And when pressed, you deflect with poise, not resistance. Over time, you become the man whose silence is not emptiness, but a wall no one can climb. They may speculate, they may gossip, but they will not touch what they cannot see, and they will not defeat what they cannot understand. This is not concealment for its own sake. It is control. It is the preservation of your strategy, your timing, your advantage, and above all, it is the final step before the strike. There comes a point where you no longer need to convince, correct, or compel. You do not chase attention because it arrives before you. You do not demand respect because silence has already earned it. This is the state Machiavelli hinted at, but never named. The moment when your presence alone commands obedience. To rule without words is not a metaphor. It is a skill, a reality, a form of invisible power cultivated through every choice you make. In posture, in silence, in gaze, in timing. Most men fight for influence with noise. But the Machiavellian man speaks only when silence has completed its work. And when he speaks, it is not to prove. It is to finalize. By the time your voice is heard, the room should already expect it. Not because you've interrupted, not because you've dominated, but because your stillness demanded gravity. Because your silence rewired the rhythm of the interaction. This is what it means to speak without speaking. To let tension, mystery, and control do the speaking for you, long before your mouth opens. The world rewards those who move with certainty, but it submits to those who don't need to move at all. The man who waits, the man who watches, the man who lets others spend their energy while he reserves his. That man does not enter battles. He ends them. Machiavelli saw that the true sovereign is not the loudest, but the least accessible. He advised princes to remain distant, difficult to read, and slow to reveal, because once the people understand you, they begin to manipulate you. But the ruler who remains opaque, silent, enigmatic, he becomes a projection of power. And in that projection, his authority multiplies. This is not about arrogance. It's about control. Control over your speech. Control over your emotional display. Control over your presence. And through that control, dominance emerges. Not through force, but through inevitability. This is where most men fail. They believe they must prove themselves. They believe dominance comes from assertion, but assertion without restraint is noise, and noise is forgettable. It is the quiet ones they remember. The ones who didn't need the floor, but were given it anyway. The ones who said less, and were obeyed more. Because power, in its highest form, is not aggressive. It is gravitational. It pulls others toward it, not by shouting, but by simply existing at a level of discipline, detachment, and mastery others cannot reach. So if you want to rule, not just speak, not just influence, but rule. Begin with silence. Speak last. Move slowly. Watch everything. And never reveal more than you must. Let others wear themselves out, explaining, reacting, seeking approval, while you sit in stillness, unreadable, unmoved, unknown. Because in the end, the man who speaks without words is obeyed without resistance. And in that silence, he becomes what others only pretend to be.